Welcome to the April Ohio ISP gatherings. Thank you for listening. I'm Kelly Fehrenbaugh, a regional support facilitator with DODD. I recently had the opportunity to spend some time with Lisa Combs, Service and Support Advisor from the Ohio Association of County Boards. We had a great conversation about outcomes and experiences, and I'm excited to share with you some of the great tips and resources that Lisa provided, and really just a fresh approach to looking at outcomes. The Ohio ISP gives us a great opportunity to reset this conversation. Thanks for joining us. Let's take a quick look back at all of the activities regarding Ohio ISP in March. Many of you were able to join us for the office hours. Many of you watched the gathering video in March. Thanks for your great contributions and questions and tips that you shared with others. We also heard some great tips and tricks from Anna in Licking County. So special shout out to Anna from Licking County Board and her coworkers for helping us out and sharing some of that great information. We also wanted to update you on some happenings on the Ohio ISP website. If you go to dodd.ohio.gov/OhioISP, check out the video. Some folks from Lake County shared their experiences in using the Ohio ISP, and we'd really love for you to take some time to watch that. Thanks so much to the people who contributed to that video. And then finally, we wanted to call your attention to another area of our website, which is frequently asked questions. We hope that you'll check back there often because we look at those questions on a regular basis. We update them as we get new questions. And as we learn more, we make sure to add new information. This is part one of a two-part series on outcomes. Today, we're really going to get back to basics. We're asking you to hit the reset button on outcomes. Ohio ISP gives us a great opportunity to make sure that we are all understanding outcomes and experiences and talking about them in the same way. We are going to spend time working through a process for identifying outcomes, share tips and resources that are going to be especially helpful if the team gets stuck, because the team will get stuck occasionally. And then next month, we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of the work. So next month, we're going to spend time using examples, writing outcomes and experiences, and then also talking through and looking at examples of how we develop and write services and supports. I want to call your attention to May's gathering, which will include separate videos and office hours for SSAs and QIDPs, which we have not done in the past. When you see the information come out the first week of May, be sure to pay close attention to which sessions apply to you. Now, we're going to jump right into it. We know you all have questions, and Lisa and I have collected quite a few over the years. And so we want to start by just acknowledging all of those questions.
All right, so questions, so many questions about outcomes. You can see from this slide that people have really come up with a lot of questions regarding outcomes. And what I would like to talk about before we really get into these questions is more about the idea that we have been working on outcomes as a state now for quite a while, and we have gotten some really cool things happening for people. And we've done a good job. And regardless of that, people keep asking more questions. Everybody wants to do better. Everybody wants to get the best outcome, the right outcome, all that kind of stuff. So I just want to share with you that over the last couple years, when I have been able to go out and talk to different counties about what their concerns and questions are about outcomes, I have gotten these kind of questions, and they are universal. Every county asks it. Even people that, we all are just doing it. So like we've learned, we started talking about outcomes, bringing it up in conversation, and then all of a sudden we realize, oh geez, this is really hard work. It isn't easy, and we know that it's been hard. And what we'd like to do today is really talk about the questions and validate that it's hard and answer what we can. And there's going to be some questions that we can't answer because it's a very individualized situation. Every situation is different, and every person is different, and where they are in their life and how to get a good life is different for them. So today we're going to I'm going to share some of these questions that I've heard around, what are outcomes? Why are they important? Who should be helping on doing this? Why am I as an SSA sitting at my desk doing an outcome, right? That happens. It happens more often than I would like it to happen. What if nobody has any ideas or they don't want to have an outcome? What do we do then? What about health and safety things as outcomes? These are all great questions. And the fact that you've all been talking about outcomes for the past 7 or 8 years is getting us all this great information. And now we're going to be able to give you some feedback about it. We're going to get a chance to really dive in a little deeper eventually. But thank you. Thank you for doing all this. And we're going to get to where we need to go with this. So be patient with yourselves, and it's going to be good.
Lisa identified a lot of the great questions we're going to tackle today. In our next session, we're going to tackle even more questions. And these questions really get to the process of writing outcomes and deciding whether or not it's a, quote, good outcome, or working through challenges that you might face, like if the team disagrees and who actually needs an outcome. We know you have these questions on your mind and many more, but once again, as we get into this today, we really want you to try to start fresh with this whole concept of outcomes, to really take a fresh perspective at how do we approach outcomes? How do we discover outcomes? All right, so let's step back for a moment and consider where else outcomes exist. This is a really short list. We could actually go on for several slides, but we're going to start small. So first, higher education, or really education in general, is focused on outcomes for students because students need to be successful in each course that they take, not only as a student overall, but also teachers are tasked with helping a student become successful in life, even beyond college. Best practices for folks who develop courses really requires teachers to start their development with the end in mind. So they ask themselves, what should a student be able to do by the end of this course? They consider where that student is starting, and then they design a content that allows that student to build on their learning by having different experiences and different opportunities for learning. The great thing about this process, all of that learning that happens in the middle, research is showing more and more that when students are empowered to accomplish learning in a way that works best for them, they are more successful. So that's higher education. One example of where outcomes, it's just what they do. It's what they're striving for. So the next one is pretty obvious, the medical field. The medical field has collected data for years about the outcomes of the treatment that patients receive. Their outcome isn't a medication that they prescribe or some procedure that a patient may have. It is actually about supporting that patient to have a better quality of life. So the great thing about the medical field, they have recognized that patients are more successful with outcomes when the treatment actually aligns with how that patient defines quality of life and how they want to get there. So I think we can learn from the medical field that person-centered practices, person-centered planning is not just for people with disabilities. So finally, our own lives. I doubt that any of you have sat down and or had anyone sit down with you and said to you, hey, Lisa, what do you want your outcome to be this year? Has that happened, Lisa?
I think I was always the instigator, Kelly.
Ah, she was the instigator. So chances are no one ever asked you that. Yeah. And you didn't even realize that you were working towards an outcome. No one called it that. You just knew there was something that you wanted to achieve, and you figured out how to get there. You figured out what help you might need from the people in your life. Um, and I'm guessing like you didn't get there without considering supports like, do I need money to do this? Do I need emotional support from the people who care about me? Do I need to learn more before I can, own a home? Whatever it might be, no one achieves something that's an outcome or a goal without looking to others for support, information, or anything else you can think of. So outcomes really are being achieved all around us, whether we actually call them outcomes or not. And our society in general is focused on outcomes. We want to see results. We want to see progress, especially if we're putting in time and energy. So where do we start? Here's the definition. Cambridge Dictionary says an outcome is a result or effect of an action, a situation, etc. Seems like it shouldn't be so hard, right? We know where else this exists in the world. We know what it means. We do this in our own lives. So how do we make it work with people who receive services? We're going to talk more about that in a moment. But first, we're going to ask Lisa a very important question. All right, Lisa. So I think at this point we need to just start with a really important question. I'm going to put you on the spot. All right.
Okay.
You're welcome. So why do we provide services and supports to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities?
Wow, Kelly. You're going for the gusto. Let's see. So, my quick answer is that, you know, we want people to have a good life. We want people to reach their potential. I mean, I go back to having, a son who receives services. And why do I reach out for help from the county board? And it's to get him the best life possible, most independence, happy, challenging, all those things. Is that what you're looking for?
I think that's a great why. And so you mentioned you wanted the best for your son and recognized that maybe your family needed some help to help him get there. Is that accurate?
No God. We need a lot of help, Kelly. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter how much experience or resources or stuff you have. The privilege of having some outside assistance in guiding through your journey as a parent, whether it's of a child or an adult, we all know the team process works, right? The more people, the more heads around a situation, the better you're going to have. And so, by all means, I mean, I've often told a lot of people on this have probably heard me tell the story about my son and his driver's license. It wouldn't have happened if it wasn't for other people. Never by the actions of our family would have it happened. And it was the SSA, and it was the teacher in high school, and it was the capabilities instructor, and all those people that really got us there.
So it sounds a little bit like what you're describing, tell me if I'm hearing you correctly, is that ultimately we provide services and supports to people so that we can help them achieve their potential. It certainly sounds like your son had, maybe you didn't call it this, but an outcome around a driver's license, going places on his own, maybe. I don't know. I mean, is that kind of your ultimate why, really, is helping him achieve those milestones that matter to him?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And it was that I didn't help him with it, right? Like, because there's certain things as a parent. I mean, his outcome for himself since he's been about 8 years old has been to have his driver's license. And as a parent, there was just a lot of turmoil and worry and anxiety and concerns, and times where I wasn't willing to help, and then eventually times where I was willing to help. But it was other people on his team. It was our systems. It was the educational system. It was everybody that was able to keep that opportunity and find out whether or not that really was a doable thing. And absolutely, it was an outcome. Now, it wasn't written in his ISP. I'm going to be honest, Kelly. I didn't do so good a job there. We didn't take advantage of that quite as well. Things were written about getting out and being independent, obviously, and there was a little bit of there was some action steps around driver's license, but there's no doubt it was the outcome for him for a good 2 years of life.
Yeah. Well, I thank you for sharing that. I think it's important for us to also recognize that people don't necessarily come to our system for just being about good care, right? Good care is an expectation. That's minimum. What we're really trying to achieve is a great life. And so what you just described to me was, I'm looking to services and supports to help my son have a great life because he deserves the same opportunity as everyone else to do so.
Absolutely. You got it, Kelly.
So based on that conversation and the answer to that question, it seems fair to say that all people deserve to have lives that they find meaningful. So what we've talked about is this is a human thing. Outcomes are a human thing. It's not a DD thing. But really, what does this statement mean? Who gets to decide what is meaningful? So, who gets to decide what meaningful is? Well, we all have those things in our lives that bring us joy, make us satisfied, bring us comfort. These are what we call important too, and hopefully all of you joining us have heard of important too. It is part of the core concept of person-centered practices. So we do just want to take a moment and talk about what is important too, because it really is what makes this person's plan and this person's plan two very different plans, right? Two very different people. I always say, like, the important twos are what brings that person to life when you're looking at their plan. And so what is important too? It's really about those things in our lives which help us to feel satisfied, content, happy, and fulfilled. So Lisa, we're going to do this again, and we're going to talk about, you have people in your life that are important to you?
Oh, just my family.
just your family. And just so you all know, I made her say family just so that I could say, really, Lisa, every single person in your family brings you happiness and fulfillment. Is that true?
Oh gosh, no, absolutely not, Kelly. That is not true. That is a pet peeve of mine, right? Like, family is such a generic term. It is, yes, there certainly are people in my family who are kind of what bring the joy to my life, right? But then there are those people that also are very important for me, but really don't, I just tolerate, right?
Right.
So, yeah, so for me, it would be that, obviously my children, but even within that, each person has its own thing that what's important to me to be with my oldest daughter, what's important to be with my son, what's important to be with they all have their own unique gifts. That why I like to travel with Carolyn. I like to sit around and watch Netflix with Emma, right? I like to go on walks with John Ross. So it's not just about the people, but it's like there's certain things about them that I love, and times that are really meaningful to me.
I love how specific what you just shared with me paints a picture, right, of those relationships. So it's not just about the person. It's not just about a generic family. It's about real relationships. And it actually kind of connected with some of these other parts of important too, things to do and places to go. You mentioned, did you say vacation with your oldest?
Yes, we're the travel partners. Yes, she and
Oh,
I go on long rides together and stay in Airbnbs, and we love to read, and we both love to hike, and we're just good. I mean, that when you look at rituals and routines of us, she and I have a really good routine when it comes to travel together, right? Whereas,
yeah.
maybe somebody else, it's somewhat stressful. I won't name any children slash Allie. No.
Right?
Yeah,
Is-
yeah, but it is. It's really about like when I'm doing things and what I enjoy doing, with who do I like to be with, and what do I like to do with them. I don't.
Yeah.
There's no one person that I want to be with all the time. Like
Yeah.
that's just not me.
I think
Maybe that's
that's
something we could go to counseling about. I don't know.
right. No, I think that that just goes to show, right? That like different relationships provide different types of happiness and joy and fulfillment. And it takes, everyone deserves to have a world that's nice and round with lots of different people who support them in different ways. And so I think those are all great examples. You talked about rituals and routines. These are super specific. I'll tell you one of my own pet peeves is when I see in someone's assessment or plan, um, Lisa is very routine oriented. And I say, okay, do you mean that this person likes to know what to expect, know what's coming next, doesn't like surprises? Or are you trying to tell me about exactly how their day needs to look? Because if you're trying to tell me exactly how Lisa's day should look, do that. Don't tell me that Lisa is routine oriented. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that one in particular.
Yeah, I love asking teams and individual people served like about what would be really important. One of my big questions I always ask is like holiday rituals or routines, like what's important on your birthday that happens, because some folks, that's the day they get to live their dream, right? And I always look for what's that special thing that happens on somebody's birthday or on Christmas, or what that maybe we could look for instigating that more often into their life, right? Like, why do we only get to do that on Christmas or their
Right.
birthday or whatever? So I love that, and I think it's so important. I mean, when I think of my son and the rituals and routines, he is routine oriented, and I'm making air quotes. I know you can't see me, but but that's not really very important because he can deal with changes in routine. But what is really important is some very specific components about certain people in his life providing certain supports to him and knowing
Mm,
who those people are around. And that's really more the important part of his rituals, is who's associated with it.
yeah, I think those are great examples. So a couple of others just to call out. Rhythm or pace of life. I don't know. I feel like COVID taught me a lot about what really matters to me about pace of life and rhythm. Or maybe it told me, gosh, I didn't realize how much that was or was not working for me until it was completely out of my control, right? And life just changed. Um, so I don't know how many of you used to like travel a lot for work. And that was like your decompression time, or how even a 15-minute drive to work that like got you amped up and ready for the day, or the 15-minute drive home before you had to face everyone that you live with. Um, for me, I think a lot about how, once we were like, oh, you're staying home now. There is no 15-minute drive. There is no 15-minute debrief, and now you're going to have meetings on top of meetings. It really actually told me a lot about what mattered to me about my own rhythm and pace of life. So sometimes we find things that are important to us simply because all of a sudden they're no longer present, and it's painful.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know that it is kind of a abstract term to think about that. I think rhythm and pace of life is also a great place to kind of where you just step back, and those people that have a chance to observe someone, especially if they don't use a lot of words, like what does their day look like? When are people more excited or more engaged in their surroundings. It's a great place to look at when people are more active in their surroundings, whether they have, verbal ways of sharing that with you, or whether you can just tell by their actions. I worked with a guy that didn't have the ability to use any words, and I found out by watching him that every time that his dad walked in the room and he had a very booming voice, that he would all of a sudden just, like his eyes would open, and he was actually visually impaired, and he would start kind of, tremoring and get excited just by the sound of his dad's voice. And so that eluded us to coming up with some ways, because his dad was older, and we actually worked it into an outcome, Kelly, about his dad recording his voice for his son, so that he could have it readily available, whether something happened to dad, whether dad was there or not.
Wow.
And it was a great thing to really change it. And that was literally just by observing how his behaviors and his actions changed, good behaviors, not bad, in life. And I think that's a really important thing as you get to know people better, to really look at, is this person, and how does their rhythm or pace change? And that might really lead you to some good ideas of making their life a little bit more fulfilling.
Yeah, I think that's a great example. Which actually leads me to status and control. I mean, this is one, and I think, Lisa's going to talk about this one a little bit more here later on. But really looking at, you mentioned your son getting his driver's license. That is a rite of passage, correct?
Oh, yeah. Status is huge. And it does lead, I mean, it is the ticket, the key to control, right? Is to have some status, be with people that have status. Yeah, that driver's license, I have said so many times that it's not just about needing a way to get to work, right? It's not just about independence. It's about, I mean, all of us can remember the day that we either learned how to ride a bike, or when we got our driver's license, if you did, and you had the ability to just, like, all of a sudden, the control that you had in your life. And he has a lot of restrictions still around his life, there's still a lot that we have to consider and support. But to have your driver's license and be able to show that, I remember when he showed it at the airport the first time, his driver's license instead of his state ID. It was a big day.
Yeah.
I mean, he wanted people to, it's a driver's license.
That is such a big day. I mean, and I think that that example is a wonderful example. And I'm sure there are a lot of SSAs and QIDPs that are listening and saying, maybe I know that person, but maybe I also know the person who that's not something that will probably ever happen for them. There are lots and lots of ways we can look at what type of status and control do you and I have in our everyday lives, and how do we make sure that that's present for folks regardless of their level of ability. I have brought up so many times, like keys. Like keys are a status symbol. And because when you have keys, that means you have a place to live, maybe, right? I hope. Maybe there's a key in there to a car. Maybe there's a key in there to where you work. They mean lots of different statuses. And so I do encourage folks to think about everybody that you serve. Do they have keys to their own place? Do they have keys to where they live? Even if they're not actually physically, I have a friend who's not physically able to use their own key, but they carry it. And they get to decide when someone else is going to use it, right? But that allows them to have that control and the status at the same time. Like, this is truly my home, and I hold the keys, and I decide when you go in and when you don't. So lots of different ways we can look at status and control. All right.
I am always big on travel too. When people have the ability to travel and share their stories of travel, that's a status. Like, it is very important, that you have, experienced things that somebody else that you met might not have, and so you can share that out with folks.
Right?
I love status.
Yeah, status is huge. I mean, and quite honestly, I always think about the first time I meet anyone. What are the things that you always tell someone, or that someone always asks about you? Usually it's, who are you, what do you do, and who are your people? Which is all this important too stuff. And so how are we supporting people to have those things? And then things to have, because Lisa and I could talk about important too for probably the whole session. So things to have, I'll tell you, we've touched on some of these already. I always share the example of that time I forgot my cell phone at home. And nobody wants to say that their iPhone is important to them because that sounds, I don't know what the right word is.
Shallow.
Yes, so shallow, right? I can't be that far away from.
It's more than just an iPhone. It is your link to the world right these days, unfortunately.
It is. And I remember that work day and how stressed I was all day because I couldn't check on my husband. I couldn't check on my children. Like, I felt like I couldn't do anything, right? And the whole day I was distracted by the fact that I didn't have this thing with me that allows me to have so many other important twos. And so, as much as I don't want to say it, making sure when I leave the house that I've got it, it is both important for and important to me. So it's another example of sometimes you don't recognize how important something is to you until it's not there. Yeah, so. All right, we've got to talk about the other part of the core concept of person-centered practices, which is important for. The first two parts of important for, I think we are all very familiar with, and that is really just around health and safety. Something that I do want to call out with health and safety is we need to recognize that just as important twos are specific and individualized, so are important fours. So thinking about issues of safety in environment, that's going to look different for everyone. What does free from fear mean? That, again, I would expect to be different for each of us and very specific to a person's situation. So making sure that we're looking at specifics in this area is just as important as it was in the important to section. So health and safety, we're good to go. I think one call out that we need to make here is that we see a lot of outcomes that are heavily focused on important for health and safety type stuff. And I want you all to take just a moment and personalize this a bit and think about a time when there was something that you knew you needed to work on, something that you knew was important for you, whether it be health, safety, whatever. So maybe it's quitting smoking, losing weight, whatever that might be. And I want you to consider if you were successful, and if you were, why? Why were you successful? Most of us do not accomplish something that's important for us simply because we know we're supposed to do it. There's always something that actually connects, something that matters to us, and that is why we are successful. So the point here really is this. Outcomes, when we think about outcomes, if you've got an outcome that's really heavily focused on important for health and safety, if it's solely based on what we think is important for the person, we have to look for that connection. What does the person really care about? If we can't find anything, then maybe it's actually not an outcome. Maybe it's just a service and support. We will talk more about that in part 2 of this series. So we've really covered health and safety. I want to go to the third part, which I've saved the best for last, because I think that this part is missed a lot. And this is really about what is necessary to help a person be valued by others, have opportunities to contribute to their community. And when you think about being valued by others, I want you to think about just society in general. What do we value in each other? What types of characteristics do we look for in people that we want to be around and spend time with? And so I'm going to ask Lisa to talk a little bit more about this being valued by others and contributing to community.
Yeah, Kelly, wow, this is like a refresher for me. I love this, right? Because like I kind of forgot that it's also important for us to be valued for others, right? I say it all the time, but I love this topic, and it made me think of this example of a young woman that I knew in my previous position, and her name was Lisa. So we'll make it easy, or it could be about me, right? And Lisa had moved out of her home and was living in a home with a lot of support. But she went to a vocab program, and then she would come home and she had some roommates that she got along sometimes with and not other times. And then and the team had really started noticing that she was gaining a lot of weight, which of course many of us gain weight in our 20s when we get to pick out our own groceries and eat our own food. And so the team kept coming up. They were really fixated because the doctor said she's probably going to need to start some medication for pre-diabetes, and we were all really worried about it, as we should be. We want her to be healthy and happy to enjoy her life. And so, but I kept focusing on the fact that like we can't just write an outcome that says she's going to lose weight and that she's going to exercise, right? Like that has that yuck feeling for me. And so I started like trying to figure out with Lisa really what's that carrot at the end of that stick, right? Like why would she want to? Does she want to lose weight? What would make it easier for her to lose weight? Does she care at all? Because we know that it might just be a support to do things if not. So when we really sat down as a group and talked about it and how she was feeling about kind of life in general, we didn't start talking about how are you going to lose weight, right? We just talked about like what would make your life better. And she started talking about those things that were the value to others and being out in the community. And she was all about that she wanted to be with people her own age that had similar interests. And when we asked her what kind of interests she had, she was like, I love bike riding, and I love taking walks and playing kind of games on my phone. I'm kind of a social media type person. And she said, I just want to meet more people. That was her most important thing. And then all of a sudden it clicked for our team that the link was to have activities and physical things in combination with people and new people in her life. So we started brainstorming what would that look like as a team. We got out the paper and we were like writing, and we talked about the group that meets at the outdoor mall, and they walk a 3-mile loop, and there's a bell and dancing when you're done, and it's just free. And we talked about geocaching groups, and we talked about exercise classes that are like dancing. She loved music. And then somebody mentioned geocaching on your phone. Have you ever just gone out and geocached? And she was like, what? If you don't know what geocaching is, look it up. But all of a sudden she got excited about the fact that she might be going out and meeting people. And so we started building that in. So we were able to really pull that important for her, which was really about getting more active. I think she also was excited about learning to do some cooking, and so the group was putting in some things there. So it was all, the big idea was it was addressing her important fours, but it was also addressing the idea that she wanted to be in a community where people were healthy and doing active things. And we're going to talk later about how we got to that idea and how you can really get there. So I am really excited that I just remembered, thank you, Kelly, that important for is also about being valued and part of their community, because that was definitely Lisa's situation.
No, thanks for sharing that. I think part two of this series, we're really going to the process that Lisa just described. I mean, that's really how you get there, right? That brainstorming and just continuing to dig deeper and have deeper conversations, I think is really what helps you get there. So thanks for sharing that great story. So after all of that discussion around important two and important four, let's come back to this. Outcomes are a human thing. We all do this. Important two and important four, also human things. We all do this. We all connect the things that matter to us to make the things that matter for us happen. What is meaningful is best determined by the person and the people that know them best. So If someone can't tell you what's important to them, what they think a meaningful life looks like, we've really got to lean on and depend on people that know the person best. And Lisa mentioned it earlier. A lot of this happens just through observation. Watch for people's reactions. When she talked about the gentleman who, when his dad walked into the room, you could tell he was happy, he was excited. It brought him joy just to hear his dad's voice. It takes more time. It takes paying close attention. But it is possible. And many of you know this information already. It's just bringing it to the surface and making sure that it gets shared. So after all of that, if you are still feeling stuck, let's talk about types of outcomes that all people work towards by talking about the 5 valued experiences.
So outcome themes, this has been something that was really helpful for me when I was an SSA, and I think it just helps make sense about, like, what is a good outcome? I know that was a question we had earlier. And what if somebody doesn't want an outcome? I think that thinking about some themes, and there's lots of different themes. On this screen, we've got one that I love, and that was one from a book called Making a Difference from Beth Mount that is actually kind of old. I think it was, back in the 80s or 90s that it was written, and it was really written for direct service professionals and how to help people get the good life. But they came up, Beth Mount and John O'Brien came up with these 5 valued experiences. And since then, there's been lots and lots of studies about these 5 themes in your life, or 5 valued experiences. These are things that are good for all people. This is not a disability specific theme. And you can watch TEDx talks about what makes people happy and have a good life, and you can look at the resiliency factors that are associated with getting people a good life, and they're very intertwined with these. So for today, I just want to share with you some ideas. What's a good outcome? What if we don't have any ideas? Why don't we look at these themes in people's lives and figure out, does this person have a sense of belonging someplace in their life? Where do they have a sense of belonging? Hopefully in more than one place. What about respect? How would it feel for a person to feel respected, whether it's at work, at home, out in the community, at a sporting event, in the teams, whatever? How do you feel respect, and where do you feel that currently, and where might we be able to build that up? Because if people feel respected, we know it gets them a good life. What about contribution? And I know we've talked a lot about the importance of contribution and belonging. And, contribution is a little bit more than just belonging, right? It's actually like, not only do I belong here, but people are counting on me to come because I value here. Hence valued social roles. I know you've all heard about it, Kelly. You've always talked about valued social roles, and I love that. This is an area that we know people with DD often don't feel like they have valued social roles or a sense of contribution, that, even though they know people around them, am I really important to be here? Choice and control is something I think our DD system has done a great job in some ways, right? Early on, we talked a lot about choice and the importance of choice, but it was kind of maybe not very deep. Just like, do you want A or do you want B? Do you want, peaches or do you want an apple? Yay, we're making a choice. Control is a much deeper choice, right? Like, what kind of control do I have in my life about the big things, and just about making mistakes and trying things that might be hard, So I think that when you're looking at folks with challenging behaviors, that respect and control often are so important, and spending some time as a team to think about, how could this person feel a greater sense of control. And then, of course, the last one that Beth Mount and John O'Brien come up with is the words sharing ordinary places. And again, this is a little bit older term. I don't, this is when I think we talk about it a lot. It really is making sure that people are in their communities, spending time with people with and without disabilities, and where everybody is, not in some sort of kind of, specialized community place. So, you know, you can use whatever word you want. But my supervisor and I really, like, we used this at every single meeting, especially when we were struggling. This is the why we're doing something usually. You know, maybe we want to get fit. We talked about that one earlier, but why do we want to get fit, right? Is it because we want people to respect us and we love people at the gym? Is it because we want to feel good and be able to go out and, you know, belong and contribute? So this is a great idea to come up with these themes and think about each one of your cases and what would make their life better, because we know that these 5-day experiences will get people a better life. So the thing that I love about the Ohio ISP is that they've actually really integrated this Charting the Life course opportunity right into it. I mean, there's been times I've said they actually stole the Charting the Life course, right? But I hear through the Charting the Life course folks that they're excited. There's no stealing going on. We do have a link in this PowerPoint about Charting the Life course, and I just love that our areas follow those amazing important areas, and they're so aligned with the 5 valued experiences. So when you look at the assessment areas that are highlighted for the Ohio ISP, you've got communication, and that is so important for people. You know, how they communicate. Do they feel like they're heard? You know, are they valued? Are they respected, right? And then you can also look at advocacy and engagement. What other way do people have a better sense of belonging and the ability to contribute than through their advocacy and engagement? And certainly people that are doing good work in that area feel respect, right? So again, these are tied in so closely. So if it's easier for you to really look at the areas of the Ohio ISP, there's some of these areas that lend themselves so nicely to outcomes. And I would say communication, advocacy and engagement, social and spirituality, you know, community living, daily life and employment. Those are areas that just, you know, as you ask those questions that are often pulled out of Charting the Life course, you should come up with areas that the individual might not have really thought of, right? Or the person might thought of, you know, like, we need to look more deeply into this, or we really want to get a little more of those respect and themes going in this area. So I hope you'll really take the opportunity to learn a little bit more about these Charting the Life course areas and really integrate them into the Ohio ISP in the way that they've said that. I think they're great for coming up with outcomes.
Lisa, I only want to add one quick thing. I think that sometimes when folks are being asked some of these questions and possibly hearing a question for the very first time, it's easy to get frustrated when people don't know how to answer, right? Or it feels like, well, gosh, they don't care about that, whatever, we'll move on. But I think it's important to recognize that some of those questions are also planting seeds. There are some folks that have maybe never considered some possibilities. And so you're planting seeds, and later, you never know, when you circle back to that, someone may have thought about that and now they're like, you know what? I've thought a little bit more about what you said, and maybe I'd like to do this. So being patient with that process and just, you know, exposing people to maybe some new opportunities and experiences is sometimes just that first step.
Agreed.
All right, so let's recap for a moment. So if we know our end result will likely be trying to find places or groups where a person belongs, sharing gifts, finding ways to contribute to the world, sharing ordinary places with people who have common interests, being respected for who you are, what you can do, what you have to offer the world, or simply just being in charge of your own life through choice and control. Looking at all of these things, then we know that we already have a place to start. So how do we start? We have to know where the person is right now and what they want, specifically these things, to look like for them. We know that we all have things that we want to achieve in life, whether we call them outcomes or not. We all have to figure out how to get there, and we really need to understand why we want to get there in order to stay motivated. So outcomes really are about a what and a why. What someone wants to accomplish and why it matters to them. The first few steps of that process we've been working on for months in these gatherings. It's really about taking the time in the discovery assessment to really understand what someone's life currently looks like, what supports they may need. Through this discovery assessment, we should be identifying what's both important to and important for the person, what skills and abilities that they have. We want to take that one step further then and say, what's really working and not working in this person's life? What do they want to stay the same or make even better? What do they want to change? Is there maybe an important to that isn't present or isn't happening for them in the way that they want? So for example, having money to spend gifts for a significant other, or maybe somebody, they want to be able to spend that money, but they don't have a job or any other form of income. Working, not working can help us identify things that need to stay the same or change. And the great thing about using working, not working is it's for the person, it's for anyone who knows them well. It's for all members of the team to take a moment, pause, and say, based on everything that we know, here are the things that are working and not working. So hopefully, if you've made it this far, you have some great ideas. But we know that many teams struggle to get even this far, especially when the person can't tell you this information, right? We said it was hard. It is hard. In just a moment, I'm going to ask Lisa to share some tips for what SSAs and QIDPs can do when they get to this part in the path to outcomes and they get stuck.
So yes, tips when we can't come up with ideas. Wow, this is probably one of the number one, questions, concerns, what makes outcomes hard. And I know we all love the words dig deeper, but I cannot come up, and I say that sarcastically, I cannot come up with a better way to say it yet, right? But these are some of the questions to help you dig deeper, right? So we talked about the themes. What is missing from the person's life? If you have somebody who's out sharing places in the community, they have a lot of choice in their life, they get to do pretty much whatever they want to do all the time, but yet we don't, and they really don't, they're living the dream. How can we dig a little deeper? We can talk more about how they can have a sense of belonging, right? We can talk about those things around having valued social roles and contribution there, and how can they be more respected. That's awesome. We got to make sure we use a team. um, I don't come up with all my own ideas for my own life. I get suggestions about I love it when people say, I think you would love doing this. And so I invite SSAs and QIDPs to really think about that. What is your idea for this person? What do you think would bring joy to their life? If you don't have an idea, you got to dig deeper within yourself before you walk in that meeting. You got to have ideas. And the other team folks also have ideas. We talked about the giving themes. I love that. Please check out the Charting the Life course, Life Stages. They have great questions because a lot of our concerns are, what about for aging folks, and they do different things, and it's not all about sharing ordinary places. And what about the young transition age? And that Charting the Life course, Life Stages link there will help you think about what's going on for people during different aspects of their life. I think the biggest thing is remembering that we want to move forward. Anything that helps somebody move forward or learn about a way to move forward that they don't want is better than staying still. I think of a railroad track all the time, right? What happens on a railroad track if you just stay still? You get hit. We've got to keep moving forward. You got to get across that railroad track. So moving forward is so huge. And if you're moving forward, you're going in the right direction, even if you learn it didn't work, because now you have new information. A couple other ideas that Kelly and I have talked about, is really if a team is struggling, you should take a pause. Like if you are just racking your brains, and this is why you don't wait until the ISP to talk about outcomes, right? You kind of are talking about it all along. Take a deep breath, move on to something else, come back to it, because sometimes people need some time to process. And I don't know, Kelly, there was another one you talked about. What was the other one that you were talking about? I really loved your ideas.
Um, I think it was really about I'm sure you do the same thing. Folks have sent me a lot of assessments and plans over the years, and I'll see something in an assessment and I'm like, oh, that's definitely going to be the outcome. And I'm all excited, right? I know that's going to be the outcome. And then I get to the outcome section and that's totally not the outcome. And so I think that what often happens is as an SSA or a Q, you're right in the thick of things. And there could be something right there in front of the entire team that maybe you're not recognizing. And so I highly encourage folks to um, ask somebody else to take a look. Ask a coworker, ask someone to take a look and just see if there's something staring us down, right? Like begging to be an outcome. Sometimes it's just a fresh set of eyes that's needed um, to kind of get the team moving forward again and spark some new ideas.
Oh, feedback is so amazing. That is probably one of the hardest things I think for all of us, but it is. I mean, I have certainly had the privilege to read a lot of plans lately, and wow, I always have an opinion. So,
Right.
and I think that we all just need to get a little more comfortable with that because it really does. You sometimes tell the whole story, and then all of a sudden it just doesn't make sense at the end. So, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a couple other I want to add to this because you touched on that belonging and valued roles. And one thing that I always said, I cannot think of a better way. It's kind of like your dig deeper. um, I heard one time it was at a social role valorization training I was attending, no goals without roles. And I wish I could figure out how to make outcomes rhyme with something, but it doesn't. So no goals without roles. And really what that means is we have, people, there are folks that have amazing lives and really great things happening. And we're like, where do we go from here? But oftentimes what I've seen is we have a lot of folks that are interested in activities and we never move it past the activity stage, right? Like I'm a music lover. And that is a role that I am proud of. And I love to connect with other music lovers. And there's a specific type of music that I love. There's a language that goes along with that. There's experiences that go along with that, like going to concerts, downloading albums. Um, it's not just about Kelly loves to listen to music. There's a whole role around being a music lover. And so I encourage you all to think about what are the interests of that person right now and can we kick it up a notch? Can we turn it into a role? Because along with roles comes better connection to other people with similar interests. So I just wanted to throw that one in there real quick. So let's take a look at the process that we've developed. We started with discovery assessment. We had great conversations. We spent time asking the questions, talking to the person, talking to the people that know them best. And let me just remind you that this doesn't work best with 10 people gathered around a table. Do what makes sense. Meet with the person by themselves, meet with the family together, meet at an informal place. Maybe if you know you're meeting with someone that's only going to give you about 30 minutes before they are done talking to you, then plan for 30 minutes. There's no expectation that discovery assessment happens in one sitting. It takes time. And so be patient with that. And it's not going to be perfect the first time either. So be patient with yourself. But in that process, when you spend the time, you start to uncover these things that people need and want in their life to help them feel happy and satisfied and fulfilled. You identify the things that need to be addressed related to health and safety and being valued. You also identify the things that people are great at, the gifts that they have to share, the skills and abilities. And you also look to the team to say, really, what needs to stay the same or be even better, and what just needs to change. All of those steps lead to an outcome that describes where the person wants to be and why it matters to them. The next time we're together, we're going to put this process to the test. We're going to walk through examples following the same process and move then into the actual writing of the outcomes and experiences. Before we leave, we want to remember where SSAs and QIDPs spend most of their time and how it relates to outcomes and experiences. So in assessment, that's really where you start keeping a look out for potential outcomes, things that people want to happen. Then when you move into planning, you work together as a team to really develop that outcome, brainstorm what experiences someone will need to have in order to be successful. And then once you've gotten started, you check in. This is monitoring. You really start to look at, did we get it right? And if we didn't, that's okay. Let's make some updates. Maybe the person changed their mind. Okay, that's fine too. Let's make some updates. And that's really where revision occurs, is making those changes when they are needed. And really, this only happens through ongoing conversation with the person and the team. So we get the question a lot, what happens if no progress is made? What happens if we didn't get it right? It is okay. As long as you are following this cycle of learning, as long as you are checking in and making updates as necessary, you are still making forward progress. So we've shared a lot of tips, and before you go, we just want to make sure that you've got 8 things to take with you. So things to keep in mind as you move forward in this work. We did ask you to hit the reset button, start fresh. We know you have so many questions, and we hope that we answered at least a few of those today, and we'll continue to answer those moving forward. But for now, focus in on really making sure that you're understanding the person, what matters to them, what they want their life to look like, using that discovery assessment and person-centered planning tools, making sure you're talking to the right people. We also want to make sure that you are keeping potential outcomes in mind as you work through these assessments and tools, and also recognizing that it's teams that develop meaningful outcomes. We also heard from Lisa some great tips for taking a lesson from really all of us, that there are all things, that we all have things in our lives that we want to achieve. We want to belong. We want to have control in our life. We want to be able to contribute. We want to feel valued by others. This is a great place to start, especially if the team is feeling stuck. And speaking of feeling stuck, one tip is to share what you've learned with coworkers. Often there's an outcome right there. You just need some fresh eyes to see it. An outcome needs to include what the person wants to accomplish and why it matters to them. Remember, if an outcome is based solely on what's important for someone, because we as professionals believe it to be that important, we have to work extra hard to connect it to something that truly matters to the person. Otherwise, we're all just going to be frustrated. And if you can't find that important too, it might not be an outcome. We'll talk more about that in our next session. 2 last tips. Worry less about the words and more about the meaning, and making sure that the person understands the words and what they mean. And finally, one more time, the team might get it wrong, and that is okay. Just be sure to update as you go with the team's input. Here's some links to the resources that Lisa and I shared with you today. So be sure to check those out if you'd like to learn more about any of the topics that we covered when we discussed identifying themes. Now that you've listened to the recording for the month, we hope you'll join one of the regional office hours to ask any questions you may have. Regions 1 and 2 will be on April 26th from noon to 1. 3 and 4 will be on April 28th from 11 to noon. And Regions 5 and 6 will be on April 27th from 10 to 11. All of the links to these Teams meetings can be found on the Ohio ISP webpage. Just go to the tab Ohio ISP Support. Also, be on the lookout for information regarding the May gatherings. This will be part 2 of our series where we work through writing outcomes, developing experiences, and also identifying and writing services and supports. Thank you so much for joining us and for all of the great work that you do.